All right, hello everyone. So today we're going to be discussing something a little unique. We're going to be looking at the physiology and kinesiology related scientific points of surfing. So surfing is not the most well-researched sport, but as the sport gains in popularity and more athletes are trying to compete on the world tour, it becomes even more important for coaches and athletes in the sport to understand the science behind what they're doing. So first we're going to run through a couple of the key scientific issues related to surfing, following up with a more in-depth review on one of these concepts to give a better understanding of this important aspect of sport. In particular, we're going to be looking at the development of upper body power in surfing. As you can see here, we've got the six key scientific concepts listed. So traditionally, one of the most commonly attributed traits a surfer needs is balance. Being able to maintain an upright position on the board when out surfing the waves is a key factor in success for these surfers. Another important concept is the development of lower body strength and its optimization for their sport. So they're going to need this lower body strength to help them produce the necessary forces, not only to help maintain balance, but also succeed in pulling off the maneuvers in each wave. Other important science-based concepts include developing aerobic capacity. So each heat lasts between 30 to 35 minutes. So they need to be able to develop this anaerobic capacity to last for that long out in the water. As well, anaerobic capacity is important to help with the development of power required for aerial tricks or paddling, things like that. Additionally, visual acuity is actually very important for surfers. When they're out in the water, they need to be able to pinpoint which waves coming are going to be the ideal waves to catch so they can plan ahead and prepare their movements. So all of these are very important. The scientific concept we're going to be focusing on today is going to be how to develop the optimal upper body strength and power for a surfer. Upper body strength is sometimes a rather underappreciated aspect of surfing, but it's utilized in almost every aspect of a heat of surfing, from paddling out, going through barrels, everything you can think of. So considering how often it's used, it's perhaps one of the most important concepts to consider for a surfer. So for this presentation, we'll be focusing on the development of upper body strength as it relates to both anaerobic power as well as endurance for each of these time periods in the surfing heat. So to understand the importance of upper body strength, first we should take a look at which aspects of surfing utilize this area of strength the most. Obviously, one of the biggest times that you're going to need to utilize strength is in the surfing paddle. So to get out into the lineup initially, a surfer has to paddle out to the point in the water where the waves break. That'll require quite a bit of endurance paddling because it takes a few minutes typically to get to the spot in the lineup where they need to be. So additionally, after each wave that they've ridden, they need to paddle again back out into the lineup. This is going to be quite a bit more intense than the initial paddle so that they can gain position in the lineup over other surfers. In this case, the surfer with the more powerful paddle and more anaerobic capacity is likely to have an advantage, and they'll gain this positional advantage and be able to pick the waves that they want to utilize. So the more intense sprinting paddling is also going to be utilized when a surfer is going into a wave so that they can gain faster entry speed. This will allow them to gain a perfect position on the wave so that they can fit more maneuvers into each wave and increase their score potentially with each one. The last and perhaps less notable spot in which a surfer utilizes their upper body strength is during wave riding. So, for example, during a barrel, they can alter their speed going through the wave by using their arms to catch the water. This will produce a drag and slow them down so that they can maintain proper positioning throughout the wave. So clearly, by looking at this list of items, upper body strength is a focus for a surfer that is very important. In fact, about half of every heat is spent paddling, making it a large span of time utilized for each surfer in a competition. Now we have a grasp on some of the areas where upper body strength is required for a surfer, it's a good idea to get an understanding of whether endurance or power training is going to be more important. So to look at that, we're going to look into which energy systems are utilized during surfing. Research has shown that the activity pattern for surfers when paddling consists of typically a lengthier period of low intensity paddling that is interspersed with bouts of high intensity all out paddling. So this shows that both endurance and power are important to surfers. So the surfers need endurance to maintain this low intensity paddling throughout the bulk of the heat, but the anaerobic power output is necessary for the shorter bouts of high-intensity paddling. So these shorter bouts typically are anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds. So we're going to be utilizing the creatine phosphate and glycogen systems both for this energy production. When considering the difference between higher ranked surfers and novices, it has been demonstrated that the peak sprint power and the anaerobic capacity of the surfers is a better indicator of surfing ability, especially when compared to endurance capacity, which has not shown too much difference between the two. This suggests that power output and the contribution of the anaerobic energy systems are key to the success of an athlete in the sport more so than endurance capacity. This has been backed up in studies that have looked at sprint paddling of competitive surfers versus more novice surfers. They saw that the oxygen deficit of the competitive surfers was greater, which indicates a greater use of the anaerobic sources of energy, and therefore a greater anaerobic capacity. This oxygen deficit essentially indicates the amount of time an athlete can last before the aerobic energy systems have to kick in. So a greater deficit is associated with a greater ability to develop power and strength. As this was seen in the higher ranked competitive surfers, it's pretty clear that a high anaerobic capacity can benefit surfers quite greatly. So with the types of energy system that have to be trained in mind, the next important consideration for building the upper body for a surfer is which muscles need to be focused on. To accomplish this, the surfing paddling motion will be analyzed. So the paddling stroke consists of 5 phases: entry, catch, pull, finish, and recovery. It's very similar to the pattern of a freestyle swim stroke. The entry phase is the initial point when the hand enters the water, and the focus should be on minimizing splash. The catch phase is the initial phase when the hand is in the water, and this is the key phase to providing power to your stroke. The pull phase then is going to increase the power output into the stroke and can see the arm rotating to allow the full forearm to propel the surfer forward. The finish is the end phase where the arm is at its greatest point of extension under the water, and was followed quickly by the recovery phase, during which the arm is coming back out of the water and rotating back to the starting position. As you can see, this is very similar to the swimming motion that is seen. However, there is no drive from the hips and no help from the lower body, so a surfer has to focus specifically on their upper body training for this. Additionally, they're going to have a greater hyperextension in their back because they have to have their upper body upright in order to see the waves in front of them and make decisions. So keeping in mind how the surfer paddles and which muscles are going to be necessary, ultimately you're going to look at which muscles are most vital to the surfer, which are going to be their back muscles and shoulder muscles, especially the rotator cuff muscles. So when beginning the paddling motion, the triceps, biceps, deltoids, trapezius muscles, and the 4 muscles of the rotator cuff are going to be utilized. These same muscles will come into play as the surfer pops up from the board. However, it will also bring the pectoralis major into the motion. So now that we have an understanding of which muscles we need to be training, we need to look at which methods of training are going to be the most beneficial. So typically, the best way to train something is to perform the movement itself. So practicing out in the ocean on a surfboard is going to be the most direct method of training and increasing strength and power in the movement. Doing sprint intervals in the water is going to most closely mimic what will occur during a heat and will benefit the surfer. As well, they can practice paddling with resistance or paddling against currents to help increase strength and prepare them for a variety of conditions that can be seen in a competitive situation. You're also going to see surfers training in the gym. So in the gym training, there are a number of exercises that can be incorporated into a training program to specifically target the surfing motions. Using a cable machine to do standing pulls can stimulate the entry phase of paddling at the start, and then the pulling phase as you move downwards. Doing a high elbow row can also help with these movements and is going to help with the motion of getting the arms out of the water and the recovery phase of the paddling motion. As well, the triceps push can be utilized to target the motion associated with the finishing phase of the stroke. Another important exercise that can help develop a surfer is going to be doing back extensions off of a stability ball to help target the hyperextension motion that's necessary when you're paddling out. Another exercise that surfers can utilize is the surfer pop-up. Essentially, they'll be in a push-up position, then transition into an upwards jump with your knees bent, almost like a modified burpee. It's directly training the method that they use to get up on the board and will help target the pectoralis major more than any of the other muscles. The last exercise that we'll talk about is using the TRX to do suspended push-ups. This helps not only to help develop the stabilizing muscles in the shoulder, but is also going to help develop your core. By melding the training done out on the water with the exercises in a gym, a surfer will be able to develop the musculature necessary to be successful in their sport. Ideally, these exercises will target some endurance capability, but to gain the most benefit, they should be done at higher weights and lower repetitions to develop that power and anaerobic capacity that will be most influential for gaining a competitive advantage.